to the most original talk radio station anywhere. We are LA Talk Radio at latalkradio.com.
You're listening to Don't Get Left in the Dust, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Welcome to Don't Get Left in the Dust. This is Paula G., and it's a forum to inform, educate, and entertain. We are live every Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific Coast Time, or Pacific Standard Time, whatever, however you want to view it. You just go to LA Talk Radio, Google LA Talk Radio, and there we are, live every Sunday at 12 p.m. If you cannot join us on Sunday, the show is podcast by going to LA Talk Radio Schedule 1, and then you click onto my site. You can download me, or just listen to it. Today we're going to focus on independent filmmaking, fiction, and I'm really excited today. We have an entertainment attorney. We're going to talk about the importance of an entertainment attorney, but the main focus is going to be on that film distribution deal. Because if you do a film, it's great, but if you don't know how to distribute or you don't have a plan, then it doesn't do you any good. So we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to go into the basics, because this type of show could go for 2 to 3 hours or several series. My guest today, calling in, is her name. I'm going to slow myself down a little bit. Her name is Akua Boyenne. How did I do, Akua?
That was perfect, Paula. Akua Boyenne.
Yes, thank you so much. Before we get into the questions today, I just want to let our listeners know your background. Akua is a Los Angeles-based entertainment attorney. Her offices are in Beverly Hills. Her clients include winning and aspiring writers, directors, and actors. She specializes in film and television transaction. Her firm also handles corporate formation, trademark, registration, copyright filing, music, and finance transactions. Akua is a graduate of Seton Hall Law School, Tufts University, extensive programs in UCLA Entertainment Law Studies. She's admitted to practice law in California, New York, and New Jersey, is a member of the Bar Association Entertainment Law Section, the Beverly Laws Bar Association Entertainment and Intellectual Property Section, and Film Independent. She's in high demand as a speaker for the California Arts and various film festivals. Akua, thank you for coming on. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Paula. Thank you for having me on your show.
I appreciate it, because there's so much interesting information when you sent it to me, and I want our listeners, especially a lot of aspiring filmmakers. Yesterday I went to a seminar, a young man who produces films from like 500,000 to $1 million. So I want to send this broadcast to them, because I think this will be a great information for them to get started on their new film. So we are kind of zeroing in on those independent filmmakers. Before we get into the film distribution package, I want to get into your law firm a little bit. What is it that your law firm offers?
Well, Paula, my firm specializes in film, television, and music law, and we represent actors, writers, directors, producers, production companies, investors, and basically all those that are connected with the entertainment industry. And it's a boutique firm, so we are able to give our clients personalized attention.
What do you mean by boutique? What distinguishes you from the other entertainment law firms?
Okay, well, by boutique, I mean at Boyenne Law, you're not a number. You're not even just your film project. We really take the time to get to know our clients. We sit with you. We find out what's important to you. I believe that a good entertainment attorney should really take the time to both educate and empower their clients so that they can really have meaningful discussions about the deal that's on the table. So, Paula, I empower my clients by explaining their contract to them in terms that allow them to fully understand the negotiation process. And I probably shouldn't even say this on the air, but many of my clients even have my cell phone number. And, of course, I remind them to use it sparingly. But if there's an emergency, especially if they're on the set, they know that they can contact me. So that's what I mean by boutique. We really take care of our clients.
You sound like you really care. You really want them to succeed in this.
Absolutely.
It's not just a business for you. It's a calling. Almost.
Absolutely. You know, I always wanted to be someone in the creative field, and I ended up being on the business side. So this is terrific. I have an opportunity to work with creative people.
Yeah, the old saying, if you can't do it, you work with them or you try to do it.
Absolutely.
I think that's great. I'm the same way. I love being around it. You may not be able to be as creative, but you want to at least be supportive. I've been kind of in the supportive area of that end. I wanted to talk about, we kind of went into your goal. You touched on your goal for your clients. But I wanted to ask if you are a aspiring filmmaker, a producer, a writer, you've got that killer script. We talked about that yesterday in the seminar. You got to have that script, and you really have a good script, and you want to look for an entertainment attorney. When should you start looking for an attorney when you start your project, or if you're beginning to be a filmmaker, to avoid those lawsuits? I know we had talked about people they get themselves in troubles, and you don't really want to get yourself into trouble with a lawsuit or a bad contract. So when should you seek an entertainment attorney when you start your filmmaking career or starting a project?
Well, that's a really great question. And, from project to project, of course, it varies. But ideally, a filmmaker, especially a producer or a writer, should have an entertainment attorney involved in the beginning, even during the submission process. So like you said, you have a pilot, you have a script, and, many times I'll get calls from filmmakers who will ask me if I submit material, if I'll submit the material for them. Many times they're afraid that someone's going to steal their idea, which, is legally known as copyright infringement. Or they're not afraid, but the studio or the network will only accept the script or the pilot if it's submitted by an attorney or an agent. So I usually send material on behalf of my existing clients to someone who's requested it. I generally don't work with unsolicited material. So to answer your question, it's great to get involved early in the process of making the film. And it's good because I am able to protect my client's interest. By submitting the material, I'm creating a traceable paper trail that shows the recipient that the material was sent from an attorney. And Paula, I'm sure you know this, it's not fail-safe. But having an attorney involved, even if the attorney is CC'd when the filmmaker's sending it, or if the attorney's sending it herself, it's used as a deterrent. So this way a filmmaker can avoid having to deal with the copyright infringement lawsuits. And those are the lawsuits that usually, get triggered early in the process.
Do you work with, let's say, new filmmakers coming in? And I know you deal with intellectual property and scripts, but if someone has a project or just starting, do you work with them on forming a type of company for them?
Absolutely. We work with corporate formations. Generally, we form the LLC, and of course that's a perfect entity, a perfect business entity to both provide liability protection as well as deal with tax issues. So that's one of the more popular corporate entities that are created.
Would you work with someone who is very, very new and just want to kind of come in and just get guidance or ask you some questions like information interview? Would you accept that?
I would. I think that, it's very important, as I stated earlier, that creative people, filmmakers, are educated and empowered. Sometimes creative people are very good at what they do when it comes to, making films, but they don't always know what's going on the business side. And I'm committed and actually passionate about educating filmmakers. So yes, they could call my office and we could have a conversation about what they're up to.
The reason I'm asking that is I've learned, going to several seminars myself, is filmmakers, the creative end is easier for, as you say, for a lot of people, but we forget it's a business. And if you want to do the next, you're only good as your last motion picture or your film or your TV series or whatever, you really kind of have to blend both.
Absolutely.
To be both. Several seminars that I've gone to in this organization I belong to, they developed their films, and they learned from them that they started to think more as a marketer or a business person. I mean, they had the creative that came, but they really had to learn to sell because they did their own funding and so forth. So you have to try to be both. You've got to blend. You do want to enhance that creativity, but you do have to understand it's a business. And if you understand the business, then you're going to be a little more successful, so you can keep doing those films. And I think that kind of segues into the fact that you do a film, it's produced and so forth, but if you don't get it distributed or have a distribution plan, then you're in trouble because it's just sitting on the shelf. So we're going to kind of get into basics in the next 45 minutes here, sort of less, that on the basics of the distribution plan. I mean, we kind of got into, people want to come in and talk to you a little bit on the business, but let's say that they have a film that they've actually finished. It's been edited and so forth, but they have no idea on how to distribute. They have no distribution plan. So how do you work with them on that if they come in to you for help?
Okay, well,
some type of deal. Right.
Well, it depends. That's why we really take the time to sit with our clients, and we really take a good look at the film. Some films are ideal for self-distribution and splitting the rights. Other films are good for theatrical release through a traditional distributor who handles all the rights. And when I say all the rights, I mean theatrical, television, DVD, VOD, and digital rights, etc. So keep in mind, even with the onslaught of new technology that allows filmmakers the opportunity to self-distribute and split the rights, the theatrical release, Paula, is still the locomotive that drives all the ancillary markets.
Yes.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There are various ways to get distribution with a theatrical distributor that handles all the rights.
So you would work with someone even if they were new? Let's say if this was their first film. What if it was their first film and it was completed? What would be your strategy? Because sometimes when you're the first timer, that's always a hard thing to get a distribution deal.
Well, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about a client right now. It's his first deal. Fortunately, he has named actors involved, and just taking a look at that particular film, a good place to start is through the film festival circuit. With the right film, producers get their film seen at festivals. But, keep in mind, there's only a handful of festivals that distributors actually attend. And just because your film gets in, it doesn't mean that you'll actually get picked up. So we're actually looking at the different film festivals, and, Sundance was last month, and many filmmakers will submit to Sundance. The chances of getting in, especially if you're new, become slimmer. But then people start submitting to South by Southwest, which is in March. And even look at Tribeca, that comes up in April. And there's a whole approach to going through the different film festivals. And there's top-tier festivals, and there's second-tier festivals. So we take a look at the film. We see what elements are attached to the film. And if it makes sense, we do film festivals. And if you don't get into the film festivals, then there actually are distributors that you can contact directly. So I make sure that the filmmaker does his or her research. And what I mean by that is the filmmaker has to identify the distributors who distribute the same genre as their film and has similar budgets, works with the similar budgets. And Paula, you know, if you want, you can, your listeners can actually go to my website and get a list of U.S. distributors who accept direct submissions from producers.
Do you?
Should I give you?
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. But before you do that, do you work with, let's say if you are new, I'm trying to reach out to people who have a film or trying to do it, but they're just, the business end is over their head. Do you work with this strategy to help them kind of hold them by the hand, so to speak?
I do.
Creating a marketing plan for them to get that distribution if you can't get into the festivals. Because I've heard also with the festivals now, because there's so many, and it is very competitive. And a first-timer, you're in that hard place in a rock kind of thing of trying to be noticed. So I just wanted to kind of get a feel of what you can offer aspiring filmmakers.
Well, as I indicated, if you don't get into a film festival, then you can actually submit directly to distributors. And at my firm, we come up with a distribution plan. And each plan for each film is different. We get involved as early as looking at the director's cut and making sure that, certain elements are in place. Of course, we're taking a look at the final cut. We're making sure that there's a website that's up, that there's a professional trailer that's up. So when you start referring distributors and various entities to your site, you have something that represents your film. So yes, we do get involved in the distribution strategy and process.
That's what I was, because like I say, a lot of people, including myself, the business end kind of goes over, and there's so much detail, and things have changed so much. And I've heard that film festivals can be a bit difficult for first-timers to come in. There's also, what about the smaller ones? I know the bigger ones like Sundance. I think Berlin, is that a big film festival too?
It is a big one, and that's the one that's just completing. There's the first-tier film festivals, and that's the Sundance, the Berlin. Cannes is coming up. You have South by Southwest, Tribeca, Los Angeles, Toronto. Those are the first tier. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the second tier is more of the Slam Dance, the Palm Springs. There's Santa Barbara, there's Chicago, Austin, and the Hamptons. And I actually, go through all these things with filmmakers and find a good fit.
So even though not as noticeable, or the as you call the first tier, even go to the second or third might be beneficial for a first-time filmmaker.
Absolutely. The theatrical, attempting to get the theatrical release is very important. It's very important. But one of the things that I want to bring to your listeners' attention is if they go to my website, and that's www.boyennelaw.com, and you spell Boyenne Law BoyenneLaw. If they go to my website, all they have to do is click on the blog page, and on the right-hand side, there's a sign-up box for a newsletter. And it's really great information. Right now, we are sharing distributors that accept submissions directly from the filmmaker. So if you enter your email address, that will be sent to you within minutes. But just keep in mind that this list it's not exhaustive. It's I think it's like 10 top distributors that accept direct submissions. It's not all of the distributors, obviously, but it's a good place to start. And it's really great. I'm actually taking a look at it right now. It has the distributor's website. It has a contact person. And it also has the genres, the budgets they work with, and all of their top box office films.
That's really great because it's all about information. The more you have, the better likely you're going to get it funded and distributed. You really do have to do your own research and be that. So all those tools on the internet are great. I wanted to go into a little bit, you probably mentioned it, but when an independent film, you get involved with an independent film, a filmmaker, and you're representing them, how would you go about maximizing? I know we touched a little bit. Can you go into further? How would you maximize the financial and the creative opportunities for that particular film? And again, I know you said that obviously each film is different. You have to look at it case by case. But how would you maximize those two situations?
Well, I guess the simplest way to look at it within a short time period is looking at it in broad strokes. Some films are better served by the traditional all rights deal with a reputable distributor, and generally those are the higher budget, more mainstream features.
High concept?
I'm sorry?
What they call high concept?
Yes, yeah. and commercial. And those are usually good for the larger distributors. And a good distributor has the resources, has the relationships, and has the expertise, which is crucial for a wide and even a limited theatrical release. So they have TV, they have VOD, DVD, and digital rights deals already in place. And so with the right film, when we are able to negotiate a fair deal, it makes sense to go with the all rights distributor. But then, as I said earlier, the self-distribution and splitting the rights can be good for lower budget films that are less commercial, that have core audiences. Even documentaries are good for the self-distribution and splitting the rights. And one of the things that many of my clients love about self-distribution is that they're able to maintain the overall control of distribution.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And many of the filmmakers are able to sell DVDs directly from their websites. So what they do is they split their rights and they make separate deals with distributors in each ancillary area. So, yeah, that's how we maximize financial and creative opportunities, by really strategizing and finding the right fit.
Depending on the project.
That's correct. But it's great because many aspiring filmmakers, they're still interested in looking at the theatrical release. You know, they're still looking for a distributor that's reputable to handle the theatrical as well as the other rights.
Well, I still think, like you said, the theatrical is it's still a driving force. You still want to put it in the theaters.
Absolutely.
I think when you're a filmmaker, that's still the field, and you feel like you are a filmmaker. you want it on the big screen.
That happens with lawyers also. You're in law school, and it's not until you try a case in court that you actually really feel like a lawyer.
Yeah.
If you're just sitting at a desk, or you haven't been in a courtroom involved in a trial, you don't really feel like you've practiced law until that happens.
Yeah, and I know as everybody's feels still. I wanted to talk about a little bit about the independent aspiring filmmakers. Do you work? Is there a certain range of film, like films that are between, some are independent films are from $500,000 to $1 million? That's considered a low budget still. Do you work with those kind of people with films that low?
Absolutely. Actually, our films range from right at the $500,000. Of course, if it's something that's really interesting and I get excited about, I would consider something lower. But we range from $500,000 up to we've been doing a $20 million film.
Mm.
So between that, I would say that the majority of films are the $500,000 to a couple of million. But we have handled films that were $10 million, $20 million.
What's become interesting is I noticed with the Academy, sometimes the winners of Academy Awards have been these independent films, these little surprising films that don't have a lot of stars to them. I think the big thing is the Slumdog Millionaire that came out of India.
Absolutely.
And it gives that as how that you wouldn't think that would. Not only was it Academy Award, but it was very high grossing worldwide. It became kind of a phenomenon, really.
It truly did. In fact, it's one of the movies where it got made for, I think it was around $14 million, some de minimis amount. It got picked up by a major independent distributor. They only put in about $35 million. So let's just say it cost about $50 million to get it out there. And then they made over, $300 million in U.S. box office.
Yeah, that alone.
Only.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're absolutely correct. That's a perfect example
of kind of a powerful, of listeners, aspiring filmmakers, that it's still down to that, as we were talking yesterday at the seminar, the killer script. If you have a great script and people love it and you put the right people, talented people, you don't have to have huge names. They were completely unknown. I think the lead in that was he only did one show in England.
Right.
So
right.
It's an example that you can find a distribution deal if you have the right people, and I think with you having the sources, you can help people who have films like that to find that audience that has
Absolutely.
that great. It's still back to that great story that we talked about a little bit. Could you kind of explain really what the traditional is? All of those the markets you talked about, the traditional. I know we talked about high concept. What are all the markets that are involved in that?
When you say what are all the markets, what do you
well, like you talked about VOD and DVD, are they still prominent despite the changes in technology? I know we had, maybe what I wanted to talk about is there was a conversation I had yesterday with some people. We thought maybe the DVD has flattened out, that you don't get the deals that you can make.
Yes, the DVD deal has flattened out. In fact, it's more the VOD that's becoming, or it's already in high demand. The video on demand is the market that is in high demand at this point.
So do you see some of those trying to, even when you're an independent, you want to go through the theatrical, but you do want to get the other, if you have a low budget, you still want to get like foreign sales, you still want to get a VOD, you want to get all of those markets, don't you, even if you have a lower budget?
Absolutely. Even if you have a lower budget, you're looking at the theatrical, you're looking at home video, that's your DVD. You're looking at licensing television if your film works for that. And absolutely you're looking at VOD. And of course, you're looking at internet media as well.
Do you think with the internet media, just on that last comment you made, do you think the DVDs will go by the wayside as one of a market?
Yes, I do.
This came up as... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
No, I was just thinking, because it kind of came up yesterday. A lot of people are thinking, are we going to get rid of DVDs and it's just going to be internet streaming, because of all the stuff where eventually it will be an obsolete market.
Yeah, I don't know if your listeners remember, but I think the DVD is going to become like the 8-track. Remember
yeah, if you're a baby boomer, which my audience is, they'll remember the 8-track. Yeah, I wanted to get your feel on that because, like I said, that came up in a discussion yesterday where some of us thought, oh, no, we do enjoy. Some of us still like the DVDs because it has many special features to it. But there was a kind of a discussion of, gee, that might go the side, like you said, of an 8-track because of the streaming and the type of the VOD and the new technology that you can just punch on your television, and there it is, So I kind of want to get your feel, since you're out there with all the markets trying to make the deals on that. I found that kind of interesting. I know it flattened out, but whether it be completely eliminated within a short amount of time was kind of a surprise for me. So I found that interesting. So you think it will probably go like the way the 8-track?
I do. I don't think that it'll happen anytime, soon. But eventually it will go by the wayside. Video on demand is relatively new, even though we're all kind of familiar with it, but it's new, and it's a rapidly expanding area. So there's cable, and there's different forms of VOD. Many new filmmakers don't realize, but there's cable VOD, which includes your basic MSOs. Those are the cable multiple system operators. And those are your cable operators like Comcast and Time Warner and Cablevision. So they are handling, VOD. And then you have your telco, what are called telco companies, the telephone companies like Verizon Fios and AT&T Uverse. And you have your satellite operators as well, Dish and DirecTV, and, the mobile VOD. So, that's just the cable aspect. Then you also have Internet VOD. And Internet includes the Internet rental, where your movie is streamed on outlets like Best Buy, Cinema Now, Apple, all of those, even your PlayStation, the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo, those have Internet VODs. And all of these outlets also have what's called ESTs. Those are electronic sell-throughs, where you can actually download and own the film. So the price points are compatible to DVD sales. And I think this is what the ESTs are, what are going to drive the DVDs into non-existence.
Interesting. As I told my viewers, I worked at Warner Brothers for 20 years, and I was in TV distribution and support. And what I found, the digital distribution was coming in very, very fast. And I want from just a little bit before we get into the details of the clauses, I want to kind of get into the contracts for the distribution plan. But I want to get your feel from the law, because the technology goes so fast. Do you find that the legal part is hard catching up with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because...
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. My mind goes... when I was working with it to make sure when we had to distribute product into television, we were doing file distribution, certain parts of the films could not be shown, or because we didn't clear the music rights for the internet, because we were doing stuff on the internet. So I was just kind of getting a feel, if you guys are still trying to play catch up with the technology from the legal aspect.
Absolutely. As the technology continues to expand, you're always looking at different ways of addressing legal issues that are triggered. So we have not flattened out at all when it comes to the law in dealing with new technology.
Yeah, I found that to be, I think it's just it's a constantly trying to play catch up. So it's always good to even talk to you as far as a filmmaker, even as guidance, what are the new laws involving all these different markets that's coming up, what I can get as a plan for the streaming, for what you just mentioned. It just changes, as I've said before, like the speed of light. So it's good just to have an entertainment attorney, see where we stand on all these different all these different markets that we want to put our distribution plan. I wanted to go into what's in the contract. You gave me some great stuff here, and I got to get into specifics for our audience. There are major clauses in a distribution plan contract. So the picture clause, what go into detail for that, what that's in the contract.
Sure. And Paula, if your listeners want to, now or at a later date, take a look at the contract, they can always go to my website. It's www.boyennelaw.com, and just go to the blog page and look under sample contracts. And they can bring up a copy of the distribution agreement. And remember, this is a theatrical distribution agreement. And I'd just like to say right quick that this is a tool that I use for educational purposes, so it's not a complete contract. There are only 10 clauses, and normally a theatrical distribution agreement has over 25 clauses. So it's just great for especially aspiring filmmakers to see the language and become more familiar with their contracts. So I think you mentioned the picture clause.
Mm-hmm.
And the picture clause is the first clause in this contract. And, many times aspiring filmmakers think that, this is simple. It's straight and it's forward because all you do is state the name of the film. But it's not that simple, Paula. It's actually laden with potential issues that will crop up if you're not familiar with the language. You see, the film is not considered properly delivered until, and the clause says, until all the documentation, advertising, and physical materials are delivered to the distributor. So, without getting too much into the detail, filmmakers, especially aspiring filmmakers, should know that their film is not properly transferred to the distributor until there's a complete package. And so that's what's called the deliverable, the deliverables, and that's the delivery list where you have to provide all these other things to the distributor in order for you to start getting paid and for your film to get seen by an audience. So I'm not going to get into the delivery list because we could be here for the next, 30 days. But one of the things that I want your listeners to be aware of is that when you get a distribution agreement, always go to the exhibit and look at the delivery list. And before you sign the contract, make sure that you're able to deliver all these things. Because if you don't, then you're already in breach. So if you don't have the items, don't sign the contract yet. And you don't sign until you have them all, until you've been able to figure out how you're going to get these deliverables completed. You can even try to have some of them removed from the list. A lot of aspiring filmmakers don't know that. And you can actually, if your film is interesting to the distributor, and it must be because they're negotiating with you, you can ask the distributor to help you pay for what you need. So that's a key thing. Go to your delivery list and make sure that you're able to work everything out on the delivery list before even signing the contract.
You know, again, this is going back to it's a business. You really have to cross your T's and dot everything and just make sure you have all your ducks in a row, so to speak, to make sure that you get the deal and get that film out and you get your money back.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what's all involved. I don't think a lot of people realize how much the business end, it's a business to get this going. The rights granted, I saw this when you sent this to me before the show. What is that in the clauses, the major clauses in the distribution deal?
Well, the rights granted clause, that's the rights that the producer grants to the distributor to exploit the film. So in a typical theatrical distribution agreement, the producer will grant the distributor theatrical, DVD, television, video demand, and internet media rights. And, many times I've seen producers license the rights to the DVD or the VOD rights to a distributor before attempting to get a theatrical distribution deal. And that is a huge mistake. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you want to get that theatrical first. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Let me give you an example. The producer completes their film. It's a great film and is approached by a DVD distributor or even, the VOD distributor. And they're offered in advance to so that the distributor can license their film. Now, this is the first money that many filmmakers see, and they jump all over the first opportunity, and they'll actually license these rights away. So they'll license their VOD. Then they come to, my firm, or they'll seek out an attorney, and they try to get a theatrical distribution deal. They can forget about it. The U.S. theatrical distributors, they know that many films actually lose money at the box office. So most domestic distributors will not take on the financial risk of a theatrical release without securing these other rights.
I've heard that too. After you mentioned that came up in a conversation when I was still at Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers had an independent film organization. It doesn't longer exist, and it kind of came up that independent filmmaker, sold their cable and TV before they sold the theatrical. And then they tried to go to Warner Brothers Independent and sell the theatrical, and it didn't work because they sold the other rights to someone else.
Absolutely.
So it just kind of they couldn't get the theatrical at all because they sold the other rights.
Yeah, don't give up those rights. First negotiate your theatrical distribution deal. And during the negotiation, you can always attempt to reserve some of the rights, but you want to be able to show up at the negotiation table with all the rights and then try to reserve them afterwards. You can't sell or license your rights away beforehand.
So you really want to nail down that theatrical first?
Yes. I truly believe that theatrical is the locomotive. It drives all the other ancillary markets. And who knows, at one point, sometime in the future, the VOD may be the locomotive. Day and date is so popular now. Movies are coming out theatrically and VOD and DVD at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It used to be, because I worked in TV distribution for 20 years, and you had a set way of distributing movies. The theatrical would come out. Then you had a certain amount of months before the hotels and so forth and so on. But now everything's becoming blurred. It has changed so much. But still, I agree. I still think the theatrical, it's still there. It may change, but I agree with you there that it definitely is the primer, so to speak.
Absolutely.
That's still a primary to the studios or even independents want to get it out on those theaters. You talked about reserved rights. Could you get a little more? I mean, we talked a little bit on that. Can you go in more detailed for that?
Well, yeah, those are the rights that the filmmaker keeps. That the theatrical, when you're negotiating your theatrical distribution, and those are the rights that you can actually distribute separately. And it's important to know exactly what's been reserved so that you can exploit these markets elsewhere. And that varies from deal to deal. The last deal I did, the producer kept, and these are some of the basic rights that are reserved, but they're electronic publishing, print publication, live television, radio, some of those rights. But they were so excited that the distributor actually took on the VOD and the DVD. So they weren't really trying to keep any reserved rights because they had such a great deal. We were able to negotiate a deal that made sense.
Territory clauses. I know I used to read the contracts when I worked in TV distribution, but can you go a little detailed on territory clauses, how that is in the contract?
Sure. The territory clause is the country where the distributor has the right to exploit the film. So many times the territory is broken into, domestic and foreign. And you just really have to know if you're going to give away the world rights or if you're going to split it and have your domestic and your foreign. Domestic usually means the U.S. and English-speaking Canada. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's all of Canada, and so you have to really watch the language and make sure that you're not giving away the same territory to two separate entities, because that is a conflict. And foreign usually means the rest of the world.
Yeah.
One thing that I think it's important for filmmakers to know is that sometimes strategically it's smart to save your foreign territories for a sales agent. And I know we haven't talked about producer reps or sales agents. Maybe we can talk about that at a later time.
There's so much information here. We could probably have 6 or 7 shows, I'm sure. Yeah, because we just kind of want to introduce how that distribution plan can work out and how you can help a filmmaker on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just I'll always say that each film truly is independent. And so we have to create a strategy that works for that particular film.
Akua, we're almost out of time. And I would love to do this for the next hour. There's so much information just on the distribution, but there's so many other things that you can offer. I want to leave with this on how people, if they would like to contact you and your firm, what are the ways you either by website or phone, whatever you want to give out, so that they can contact you at whatever stage they are in their filmmaking process.
Okay, terrific. Well, filmmakers can get in touch with me by calling my office, and my office telephone number is 310-858-5538, or feel free to email me at akua@boyennelaw.com. And that's spelled AKUA at Boyenne Law, BOYENNELAW.com.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Akua. We're going to have you come back because I know there's a lot of stuff we could talk about on entertainment law, because it's so important and people want to be successful and then they want to go and do their next one. So you want to be able to do that. And I wanted to, again, thank you again, and hopefully come back on the show. For all those out there, whether you're filmmakers or if you're an entrepreneur, don't get left in the dust there. Move forward. Hang on to your dreams and have a great Sunday. And I will see you. I will be here again next Sunday in the future. We will have more inspirational talks and on how to work an event. I'm having somebody coming talking from Chicago on how to work events to move forward. We're also going to have more documentary filmmakers as well as independent filmmakers. So hang in there. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Don't get left behind. Fulfill your dreams. Move forward. Take care and have a great rest of the day.